cameras swarmed like a swarm of relentless bees, flashing and clicking as Karoline Leavitt stepped forward, her voice trembling but urgent. "Jasmine, I'm asking you please drop this lawsuit. $80 million is too much. We can resolve this, I beg you." Her hand shook, a desperate plea broadcast to the world, every word echoing through the crowded press room. Reporters leaned in, sensing the drama, their lenses capturing the strain in her face. The raw vulnerability that politicians rarely show. Leavitt's eyes darted, pleading silently, scanning the room for an ally. The murmurs grew louder. Onlookers exchanged glances, some in disbelief, others in fascination, as if they had stumbled into the climax of a drama scripted by fate itself. Social media notifications lit up instantly, phones recording every second, ready to spread the spectacle worldwide. Every detail mattered, the quiver in her voice, the slight hesitation before each word, the weight of the $80 million hanging in the air like a guillotine over her career. Then there was Jasmine Crockett, calm, composed, unshaken. Her gaze met Leavitt's and held it without flinching. No pleading, no faltering. Just a steady, unyielding firmness that spoke louder than words ever could. The room seemed to freeze. The clamor of cameras and whispers dimmed under the sheer weight of Crockett's presence. Every gesture, every word from Leavitt collided with Crockett's icy determination. "Karoline," Crockett said, her voice soft but cutting through, the tension like a scalpel. "This is not negotiable." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. The cameras caught the tight clench of Leavitt's jaw, the rapid intake of breath, the desperate sway as reality sank in. Witnesses whispered, stunned. Some mouths fell open, some eyes narrowed in astonishment. This wasn't just a legal confrontation, it was a dramatic power struggle laid bare, the kind that gets people talking for weeks. Social feeds exploded instantly with clips. Debates flared, opinions divided, hashtags trended. The world was watching, and the moment was unforgettable. Leavitt's plea had failed. The stage was set, the stakes higher than ever, and the audience was left gripping their seats. The cameras kept rolling, every frame immortalizing the collapse. Of arrogance under the pressure of unwavering integrity, but what Crockett said next left everyone, including Leavitt, completely speechless. The echoes of that charged moment reverberated long after the press room cleared. What had begun as a single confrontation between two political figures now stood at the crossroads of personal legacy and national discourse. This was not just another courtroom drama, it was an $80 million question hanging over the country's conscience. Why that number? Why did it matter so much? To some, it was a staggering figure designed to humble arrogance, a price tag meant to remind the powerful that accountability carries weight. To others, it seemed excessive, a political weapon cloaked as justice. $80 million is not just money, it is symbolism. It is the weight of credibility, the cost of trust, the measure of how much one life, one reputation, one cause is deemed worth in the eyes of the law. Crockett's refusal to back down carried a message far larger than the case itself. Integrity cannot be bought off, not even with tens of millions. Yet to Leavitt and her supporters, it was a devastating liability. A threat not only to her career, but to the network of alliances she represented. The ramifications rippled instantly. Headlines flashed across major outlets. Leavitt pleads, Crockett refuses. $80 million battle could redefine political accountability. Cable networks ran breaking banners for hours. Opinion columns framed it as a pivotal test of character in modern politics. Was America still a place where truth and courage could stand up to money and pressure? Meanwhile, social media became a battlefield of its own. Hashtags like #StandWithCrockett and #Leavitt collapse trended within minutes. Progressive voices praised Crockett's composure. She's the role model we need, come fearless, unshaken. Conservative commentators pushed back, accusing her of grandstanding, framing the lawsuit as a vendetta rather than a pursuit of justice. Memes circulated within hours, contrasting Leavitt's trembling plea with Crockett's steady, almost regal stare. Twitter threads dissected every second of body language, while TikTok edits dramatized the showdown with cinematic music, turning a legal standoff into viral culture. Beyond the noise, the implications were deadly serious. Political pundits debated the stakes relentlessly on evening panels. If Crockett prevailed, it could set a precedent that even those shielded by power and influence were not beyond accountability. If Leavitt managed to escape, it might embolden future figures to believe desperation and negotiation could erase the consequences of their actions, careers, reputations, and perhaps even upcoming elections were suddenly intertwined with the fate of this single lawsuit. And for the audience watching, the drama felt personal. For immigrants, for minorities, for those who had ever been told to back down in the face of authority, Crockett's stand was validation. For those invested in preserving an old guard of power, Leavitt's desperation mirrored their own anxieties. About a shifting political landscape, the division was clear, sharp, and emotional. Every hour that passed seemed to raise the tension higher. Every new headline, every viral clip, every heated exchange online made it clear. This wasn't simply about two women in a legal dispute. This was about values colliding, about the weight of truth versus the fragility of arrogance, about whether integrity could withstand the crushing force of money and influence. The next move could reshape careers, reputations, and even the political landscape. To understand why this moment became so explosive, we need to look back at the players involved. Karoline Leavitt had always been a figure who thrived in the spotlight. From the beginning of her political career, ambition drove her forward like an unrelenting force, pushing boundaries and ignoring cautionary whispers. She was known for her bold stances, her unapologetic rhetoric, and her ability to command attention wherever she went. Campaign rallies were electrified by her charisma, speeches punctuated with confident gestures, and social media posts that ignited passionate debates. For supporters, she was fearless. For critics, she was reckless. Her trajectory was littered with moments that defined her public persona. Early in her career, she had taken audacious positions on policy, often clashing with party elders who viewed her approach as dangerously provocative. Headlines routinely chronicled her bold moves, sometimes lauded as visionary, other times criticized as brash overreach. Leavitt's charm and confidence allowed her to survive scandals that would have derailed many. She had cultivated an image of invincibility, a politician untouchable, a woman who could bend controversy to her favor. Yet behind the public bravado lay a series of missteps that revealed cracks in the armor. Legal troubles, some minor but damaging, and optics had dogged her for years. It's questions about campaign expenditures, questionable endorsements, and misstatements in official filings were meticulously recorded by opponents and journalists alike. Each incident seemed to vanish under the glare of her bold public presence, yet cumulatively. They painted a picture of someone willing to gamble with ethics for advantage. Her personal gaffes, too, became fodder for scrutiny. Social media foe. Offhand remarks during interviews, moments of unfiltered arrogance reminded the public that confidence could easily tip into hubris. Leavitt's reputation was a paradox, admired for audacity yet mistrusted for unpredictability. The very qualities that propelled her rise also planted the seeds of vulnerability. Then came the lawsuit, a challenge unlike any she had faced before. The $80 million claim was more than a financial threat. It was a direct challenge to the image of control she had meticulously cultivated. The politician who had once stood unshaken under media storms now found herself pleading publicly, her voice betraying the desperation she could no longer hide. Where previously she had deflected criticism with charm or defiance, now every word carried the weight of fear. Cameras captured the tremor in her hands, the tension in her posture, the subtle desperation in her tone. It was a stark contrast to the formidable persona she had projected for years. Even seasoned observers noticed the difference. Those who had once admired her audacity now saw vulnerability. The juxtaposition was striking. A woman whose career had been defined by confidence and fearlessness now exposed her uncertainty. The cracks in her armor magnified under the scrutiny of millions. Her calculated risk-taking once a hallmark of her political genius, now seemed reckless. A dangerous gamble against someone who would not waver. This moment crystallized a truth that few had. Openly acknowledged, Leavitt's strength had always relied on the perception of power, and when that perception faltered, so too did the carefully constructed image. Each glance, each word, each motion during the confrontation with Crockett reflected not only desperation, but the realization that audacity alone could not shield her from accountability. Asterisk her story, full of ambition, controversy, and moments of unbridled confidence, had prepared her for the spotlight, but it had not prepared her for the moral and emotional weight of this challenge. The public, accustomed to seeing Leavitt as unstoppable, now watched her humanize under pressure, her arrogance giving way to anxiety, her boldness yielding to panic. The villain, once larger than life, was suddenly acutely vulnerable. But if Leavitt's history is checkered, Crockett's path tells a very different story. Jasmine Crockett's story had always been one of perseverance and purpose. From the earliest stages of her career, she demonstrated a commitment to integrity that set her apart in the often murky waters of politics and law. Unlike many who chased headlines or short-term victories, Crockett's trajectory was defined by long nights, careful preparation, and a steadfast dedication to justice. She earned her reputation not by flamboyant gestures or empty promises, but by consistent, values-driven action that resonated with those who believed in principled leadership. Her rise was not easy. Crockett had faced obstacles that could have deterred anyone less determined. Political machines often favored those who played it safe or pandered to power, but she refused to compromise her principles. She took positions that were sometimes unpopular, fought for causes that were complex and controversial, and did so knowing that public approval was never guaranteed. Each campaign, each legal battle, each decision reflected a commitment, not to fleeting applause, but to a standard of ethical leadership that she refused to bend. Crockett's career was punctuated by moments that tested her resolve. In the courtroom, she took on cases that many considered unwinnable, defending the marginalized and standing up to powerful interests. Her approach was methodical, rooted in evidence, and bolstered by an unshakable sense of justice. She became known as a figure who could navigate political storms without losing her moral compass, a rare combination of strategic intelligence and personal integrity. Colleagues respected her, opponents grudgingly admired her, and the public often found inspiration in her calm, collected demeanor under pressure. The sacrifices behind that composure were immense. Long hours spent researching legislation and legal precedent, missed family milestones and personal moments deferred in service of a greater cause defined her journey. While others pursued comfort or convenience, Crockett invested in preparation, resilience, and mastery of her craft. Every speech, every courtroom argument, every legislative decision was the result of meticulous planning and an unwavering commitment to principle. Her reputation was not built on optics, but on outcomes, tangible victories that improved lives and held the powerful accountable. Yet it was her ability to remain composed in the face of threats that truly distinguished her. Whether confronting a hostile legislative body, negotiating with entrenched political interests, or addressing public outrage, Crockett maintained a level of poise that few could emulate. She never allowed fear, intimidation, or anger to dictate her response. Even when provoked, she responded with measured words, careful logic, and a clarity of purpose that made her presence commanding. This wasn't performative, it was the reflection of someone who had internalized the weight of responsibility and the importance of moral consistency. Her colleagues and constituents often remarked on this trait. "In the middle of chaos, she is the eye of the storm," one aide once said. She doesn't just survive pressure, she turns it into clarity, into action. This reputation would soon become central, for the challenges that lay ahead were unprecedented. The confrontation with Karoline Leavitt was not merely a legal dispute, it was a test of character, a crucible in which Crockett's calm and integrity would be scrutinized by millions. Her history had prepared her for scrutiny. Her principles had fortified her against temptation. and her experience had taught her patience and focus in equal measure. Crockett's ability to balance empathy with firmness, compassion with unwavering standards made her a hero not because she sought adoration, but because she represented something larger than herself. In a world often swayed by spectacle and bluster, she stood as a reminder that courage could be quiet, strength could be measured, and leadership could be rooted in service rather than self-interest. Those who observed her career closely recognized that her resilience was not accidental. It was cultivated through years of dedication, personal sacrifice, and an unyielding commitment to justice. And yet, as the cameras trained on her now, facing the desperate plea from Leavitt, her composure was about to be tested like never before. The stage had been set, the stakes defined, and the eyes of a divided public were watching. Crockett's calm demeanor, forged through years of preparation and principle, would meet a challenge that threatened to push even her extraordinary resolve to the limit. Her ability to stay composed in chaos would soon be tested like never before. The room was thick with tension, every seat occupied, every lens trained on the two women at the center of the storm. Journalists jostled for position, microphones poised, cameras flashing, capturing each micro-expression with relentless intensity. It was a scene that could have been lifted from a political thriller, the stakes palpable not only in the courtroom but in every living room, phone screen, and newsfeed across the nation. Karoline Leavitt's voice rose, sharp with desperation. "Jasmine, please think about what this could mean. $80 million, it's excessive, it's unnecessary. I'm asking you, don't do this. We can find a solution, I promise." Her hands were animated now, trembling as they emphasized her words, eyes darting between Crockett and the cameras, pleading silently for any sign of compromise. Each pause, each breath, revealed a growing panic, a vulnerability she had never exposed publicly before. The whispers of the spectators swelled into a low hum, punctuated by the soft clicks of camera shutters. Onlookers leaned forward, holding their breath as Leavitt's appeals intensified. Social media feeds erupted in real time. Clips of her tremulous pleas circulated within minutes, trending hashtags igniting debate and commentary. Some viewers expressed sympathy, seeing a politician cornered by circumstance. Others mocked the display, pointing out the irony of a woman so accustomed to control, now reduced to entreaty. Every angle was scrutinized, every word dissected in endless threads. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett remained unmoved, her posture impeccable, her expression composed. Her calmness was almost unsettling, a stark counterpoint to the frantic energy radiating from Leavitt. When she spoke, her voice was steady, measured, cutting through the noise of the room with quiet authority. "Karoline," she said, each syllable deliberate. "This isn't about personal gain or loss. It's about accountability. It's about justice." There was no flinch, no hesitation, only the quiet power of someone who had faced crises before and refused to be rattled. Contrast was electric. Cameras caught the smallest details, the slight tremor in Leavitt's hands, the deep inhale before her next appeal, the tightening of her jaw. Crockett's composed gaze, unshaken and unwavering, dominated every frame, journalists whispered among themselves, noting the drama unfolding like a carefully orchestrated narrative, one that was impossible to look away from. Even the seasoned courtroom staff, accustomed to heated debates and high-profile cases, found themselves holding their breath. Social media amplified the spectacle exponentially. The clips went viral within seconds. TikTok recreations, Twitter reaction threads, Instagram stories highlighting the tension. Commentators debated not just the lawsuit itself, but the character on display, the desperate pleading of a seasoned politician versus the resolute poise of a woman defending principle. Analysts dissected body language, tone, and intent, creating an ongoing narrative that extended far beyond the walls of the room. Leavitt's frustration escalated. Her appeals became more urgent, bordering on frantic. "You don't understand what this does to me, to my career. Please, Jasmine, just reconsider. Think about the consequences." But Crockett's face remained calm, her eyes unwavering. She listened, but did not waver, not because she lacked empathy, because her clarity of purpose outweighed the pressure. The audience, both in the room and online, felt the tension coil tighter with each passing second, the collision of desperation and resolve electrifying the atmosphere. Every camera flash, every whisper, every viral clip heightened the stakes. The confrontation was no longer just a legal matter. It was a test of composure, a battle of wills played out on a public stage. And millions were watching. The narrative of hero versus villain, of fear versus integrity, crystallized in every tense heartbeat of the moment. Then, in a move no one expected, Crockett made her stance crystal clear. The room seemed to hold its breath as Jasmine Crockett straightened, her gaze sweeping the press gallery and settling finally on Karoline Leavitt. Silence fell like a curtain, thick and heavy, punctuated only by the occasional camera shutter. Every eye was fixed on Crockett now. Every social media notification pinged as viewers online paused, glued to live streams capturing the unfolding drama. The moment had arrived where principle would meet desperation, where composure would confront chaos. Crockett began, her voice calm, deliberate, measured. "Karoline," she said, letting the single word hang in the air like a challenge, "this is not a negotiation. This lawsuit is about more than money. It is about accountability, about integrity, about ensuring that actions have consequences. When they cross the line..." She paused, allowing the weight of her words to settle. A hush rippled through the room. Even seasoned reporters instinctively leaned forward, sensing a turning point that could define careers. Leavitt's eyes widened, her lips parting as though to respond, but Crockett held up a hand ever so slightly, a quiet signal that this was her moment. She continued walking slowly, measured steps echoing in the room. "We live in a country where the powerful are often shielded from consequences, where wealth and influence can insulate mistakes, arrogance, and even misconduct. But that cannot and will not be the precedent here. Justice must be consistent, impartial, and unwavering." The words were deliberate, but beneath them flowed a moral force so tangible that it seemed to push the tension in the room into a tangible shape, a pressure that pressed on everyone present. Leavitt's posture stiffened. Her confident mask, so carefully maintained for years, was beginning to crack. Small tremors ran through her hands. Her gaze darted nervously toward the cameras, as if seeking an escape route from the scrutiny that Crockett's calm authority now commanded. The audience, both in the room and online, sensed the shift. Clips of her earlier pleas circulated anew, juxtaposed against Crockett's serene, commanding presence. Memes appeared almost instantaneously. ### desperate, Leavitt capturing. The stark emotional contrast for viral circulation. Crockett's voice softened slightly, but the conviction only deepened. This is not personal. It is not revenge. It is the principle that actions, regardless of who commits them, must have consequences. To abandon this lawsuit would send a signal that power can silence accountability, that desperation can outweigh truth, and that is not a message we can afford to send to our communities, to the people who look to us for fairness, justice, and dignity. Her words drew nods from journalists, some murmuring quietly in agreement, while political analysts leaned into microphones already scripting their coverage of the moment. Every sentence was a slow reveal. Every pause a cinematic beat that amplified the tension. Crockett referenced documented evidence, legal precedent, and moral responsibility, layering her argument with an unassailable combination of logic and empathy. She spoke not to attack, but to illuminate, allowing the audience both live and digital to internalize the righteousness of her stance. Every eye in the room remained fixed on her, and the camera captured Leavitt's growing anxiety. The widening chasm between desperation and dignity. Leavitt's voice broke as she interjected. "But Jasmine, don't you see the fallout? The media, the public, they won't understand the nuance." Her words trembled with urgency, but Crockett simply maintained eye contact, unmoved. Her response was a quiet, powerful reminder. The public will understand courage when they see it. They will recognize integrity when it stands firm. And they will remember the choice to uphold principle, even under pressure. The effect was immediate. Social media users erupted with praise. Clips of Crockett's measured delivery circulated endlessly. Pundits dissected the composure. Commentators applauded her moral clarity, and ordinary viewers expressed admiration for the steadiness she embodied. Memes highlighted the stark contrast: the calm, unflinching hero facing the visibly shaken figure of a once commanding politician, undone by her own desperation. Analysts predicted political ripple effects, and journalists tweeted real-time reactions. That framed Crockett as the moral center in a spectacle of vulnerability. Leavitt's confidence crumbled further. Her hands gripped the table, knuckles white, her eyes darting in search of a lifeline that did not exist. The once bold politician was now defined by the desperation that Crockett's calm presence had exposed. Every argument she tried to muster faltered under the unyielding weight of Crockett's reasoned, composed counterattack. Where she had tried to command, she now flailed. Where she had sought negotiation, she found only refusal and the mirror of her own accountability. The audience felt it. Those watching in the courtroom, at home, on their phones, everyone sensed the turning point. The spectacle had moved beyond the individual dispute, had become a lesson in leadership, courage, and unwavering adherence to principle. Crockett's delivery was not just a counterattack, it was a revelation. A demonstration that poise, preparation, and integrity could prevail where panic and arrogance could not. As she concluded, her voice held steady, every word ringing with clarity and moral weight. This lawsuit will proceed because it must. It's not out of spite, not out of vengeance, but because it is right. And when history looks back, it will remember that integrity stood firm while desperation faltered. The room remained silent for a heartbeat longer. Before the press corps erupted into a flurry of activity, social feeds exploded, and Leavitt's face told the story words never could. The collision of heroism and desperation had reached its apex. Every camera flash, every whispered reaction, every viral clip had captured the truth. Composure, principle, and moral courage had won the moment. Leavitt's once imposing confidence was reduced to a tremor under scrutiny, while Crockett's dignity radiated, commanding respect, admiration, and awe. The world was watching, and the aftermath would be unforgettable. The confrontation between Jasmine Crockett and Karoline Leavitt didn't end when the cameras stopped rolling. In truth, it was only the beginning. Within minutes of Crockett's calm yet devastating counterattack, the internet caught fire. Clips of the exchange circulated across every platform imaginable: Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, each one replayed with captions, commentary, and stunned emojis. Hashtags began trending globally. Hashtag Crockett Unshaken, hashtag Leavitt Begged, and, most biting of all, hashtag 80 million reasons. The sheer velocity of the digital storm was staggering. A single clip of Crockett pausing mid-sentence, locking eyes with Leavitt, and firmly stating why justice demanded the lawsuit continue was replayed millions of times in the first hour. Users paired the footage with booming soundtrack remixes, GIF loops, and even cinematic edits that made the moment look like a climactic scene in a political thriller. What was meant to be a desperate plea by Leavitt had, in real time, transformed into a meme-worthy collapse of composure. Celebrity voices joined the chorus. Public figures wasted no time adding their voices. A-list actors, recording artists, and activists reposted the viral clips, often with sharp commentary. "This is what courage looks like," wrote one Hollywood star. A prominent athlete tweeted, "Note to self, never beg against someone who knows the law and has nerves of steel." Each endorsement amplified the narrative, making Crockett appear not just as a politician, but as a cultural icon. Meanwhile, late-night comedians seized the opportunity for satire. One joked, "Leavitt begged so hard. I thought she was auditioning for a soap opera." Another quipped, "Forget lawsuits, Crockett just won the internet." Audiences roared, and the clips were replayed the next morning on talk shows nationwide. Pundits and analysts react beyond entertainment. The political sphere was shaken. Cable news panels lit up with discussions, analysts dissecting every line of Crockett's statement and Leavitt's unraveling demeanor. Some noted that Crockett's handling of the confrontation could serve as a case study in political communication, blending moral conviction with legal precision. Others speculated about how this moment would affect the balance of power in upcoming elections. This wasn't just about $80 million, one commentator argued. This was about integrity versus opportunism. Crockett emerged as the adult in the room, Leavitt. She looked cornered, desperate, and frankly unprepared. Even international outlets picked up the story, drawing parallels to political showdowns in their own countries. In London, a major paper headlined, "American lawsuit drama. Crockett holds firm, Leavitt crumbles." In Asia, commentators praised Crockett's restraint under pressure, contrasting it with Leavitt's visible unraveling. The ripple effects were global. Leavitt, under fire for Karoline Leavitt, the fallout was brutal. Instead of garnering sympathy, her begging became a spectacle. Opponents and critics resurfaced old controversies, weaving them into a narrative of recklessness and instability. Even some of her allies grew quiet, unwilling to defend a moment that had clearly backfired. Her team attempted damage control, releasing a statement about her passion for justice and her emotional investment in the matter, but the words rang hollow against the viral videos that showed her pleading while Crockett stood unflinching. Memes portraying her as panicked and cornered only fueled the mockery. In private, whispers spread about Leavitt's political viability. Was this the beginning of the end for her ambitions? Commentators noted that one public implosion can echo for years in the ruthless world of politics. Crockett's rising star for Jasmine Crockett. However, the moment solidified her place in history. Not only had she stood firm, she had done so in a way that inspired a movement. Donations to causes she supported spiked overnight. Her speeches and past interviews were suddenly resurfacing, with new audiences eager to hear more from the calm, composed figure who refused to bow under pressure. Grassroots organizations hailed her as a champion of integrity. Law professors began assigning her confrontation as a modern example of rhetorical mastery in legal and political discourse. Online petitions even circulated, urging her to consider higher office. Most importantly, ordinary people felt a connection. Parents posted about wanting their children to be as brave as Jasmine. Students shared clips of her speeches alongside motivational captions. For many, she was no longer just a politician was a symbol of resilience in a chaotic age. A larger meaning emerges. What became clear in the aftermath was that this confrontation was bigger than two women in a lawsuit. It was about the values Americans craved in their leaders: steadiness, integrity, and an unshakable commitment to principle. Crockett embodied all three, and the nation took notice. And yet, the story was far from over. While Crockett emerged victorious in the court of public opinion, the legal battle itself still loomed large. $80 million wasn't just a number, it represented accountability, its consequences, and the possibility of systemic change as the dust settled from the viral storm. One truth became undeniable. Crockett had not only defended her lawsuit, she had defined herself as a political force of nature. And yet, this story wasn't just about a lawsuit. It was about values, integrity, and courage. In the wake of the confrontation and the viral storm that followed, Jasmine Crockett took a moment to address the nation. Not with grandstanding or theatrics, but with quiet authority and clarity. She reframed the entire episode in a way that transcended politics, legal battles, or viral clips. It was no longer a story of desperation versus composure. It had become a lesson in courage, integrity, and the enduring power of public service. Moments like these, Crockett began, her voice steady and resolute, remind us that leadership is not measured by fear or fortune, but by the willingness to stand firm in the face of pressure. Accountability is not negotiable, and integrity is not conditional. She paused, allowing the weight of her words to settle. There remained the countless viewers online, absorbing the moral clarity she projected. Every gesture was deliberate. Every glance confident, embodying the very principle she spoke of. She spoke of values over vanity, service over self-interest. We live in a world where intimidation, greed, and desperation can seem overwhelming. But true courage is not loud or performative. It is quiet, consistent, and unwavering. It is about choosing what is right even when the stakes are highest and the consequences uncertain. Crockett's message struck a chord. For immigrants, minorities, and everyday citizens watching, it was validation that standing by principle mattered. For political aspirants and public servants, it was a blueprint for leadership under pressure. The confrontation with Leavitt, she explained, was a microcosm of a larger truth, that justice, fairness, dignity must never be sacrificed to convenience, fear, or the whims of power. Her decision to maintain the $80 million lawsuit was not about vengeance, it was about demonstrating that accountability is universal. It was about showing that no amount of money, influence, or desperation can override the principles that sustain trust in public institutions. Crockett's words extended beyond the immediate spectacle. She emphasized resilience and moral clarity as tools, not only for leaders but for all citizens. Every time we face moments of fear or pressure, she said, we have a choice: to compromise our values or to stand firm and remind ourselves that integrity is not optional. Courage is contagious, and it shapes the communities we serve. Her calm, deliberate delivery reinforced the lesson. It was not a lecture, but an invitation to reflect, to aspire, and to internalize the strength she exemplified. Public reaction confirmed the resonance of her message. Commentators noted that her framing transformed a heated political confrontation into a teachable moment. Social media shifted from sensational clips to thoughtful commentary, as audiences discussed the importance of ethical leadership, personal responsibility, and the courage to uphold justice. Ordinary citizens shared stories of their own small battles, standing up at work, advocating for community causes, or supporting vulnerable neighbors, drawing inspiration from Crockett's example. The broader takeaway was unmistakable. Leadership is about character, not theatrics. Success is measured not by immediate victory, but by the consistency of one's principles under pressure. Courage is demonstrated when fear, intimidation, or greed tempt compromise, and dignity shines brightest when others falter. Crockett's confrontation with Leavitt had provided a cinematic demonstration of these truths, a real-world illustration of why values matter in public service and in life. As the dust settled, viewers and constituents alike were left with a sense of empowerment. They had witnessed a leader navigate chaos with grace. A politician transformed tension into clarity, and a moral example into tangible action. The emotional crescendo was not built on spectacle alone. It was anchored in the affirmation that integrity, courage, and public service are not abstract ideals but guiding forces that shape real outcomes. The lesson was clear: standing firm under pressure, defending what is right, and upholding dignity in the face of intimidation creates ripples far beyond the moment itself. In a world rife with political gamesmanship, ethical lapses, and fear-driven decision-making, Crockett's example reminded everyone that principles endure where panic and self-interest falter. The confrontation, the viral storm, the desperation, and the calm resolution all converged into one enduring truth: the triumph of courage and integrity over fear and greed, of public service over personal gain. The lesson? Even in the harshest political storms, dignity always prevails. The drama of that fateful confrontation between Jasmine Crockett and Karoline Leavitt is now etched into public memory. A desperate plea, a poised response, and a viral storm that captivated the nation. Every moment revealed not just personalities, but principles. We witnessed a politician begging for leniency, her confidence unraveling under pressure, and a leader standing firm with unwavering integrity. It was more than a legal battle. It was a clash of character, courage, and conviction. JasmineCrockett's.com, composure, and steadfast dedication reminded us why integrity matters. In the face of intimidation, she chose principle over panic, justice over convenience, and public service over self-interest. Her example shows that leadership is not defined by fear or wealth, but by the courage to do what is right, even when the world watches in, even when the stakes are enormous. Leavitt's desperation only highlighted the contrast, reinforcing the power of dignity and ethical resolve. This confrontation is a story that resonates far beyond politics. It's a reminder that every one of us faces moments where fear, pressure, or temptation challenges our values. Standing firm, speaking truth, and holding to integrity, these are the acts that define heroes, inspire communities, and shape the future. So take this moment to reflect, to share, and to engage. Share this story, let others witness the triumph of courage and principle. Subscribe for more high drama, political battles where heroes rise. Villains falter, and lessons in integrity are front and center. Stand with those who choose dignity over desperation. And let these stories remind us all that doing what is right even when it's hard makes all the difference. The world is watching. And your voice matters. Be inspired. Stand firm. Uphold what is right.